Hi everybody, happy Monday. I hope you're all having a great day. I woke up this morning with a very raspy throat, sore throat, and horrible headache, but I'm just pushing through and following through with my commitments with you guys before I go head over and rest some more. And so savings, something that's super passionate. I'm super passionate about, and something that I have learned. It's not something that I was ever raised to know how to do, was to save. In fact, I was shown the example of kind of spending money, like as soon as you have money, it's burning a hole in your pocket. Just get rid of it. And it created really poor habits, really poor spending habits, both my husband and I. And so something that we both had to agree on working out of. So together, as I've shared in my first video where I introduced myself, one thing I do remember, I realized that I forgot to share was that my husband and I have been married for 7 years. We got married December 12th, 2010. And we have 3 boys together, and I'm pregnant 12 weeks. Tomorrow I'm pregnant 12 weeks. And so I was a single mom with my first son, and then he adopted my son, and then since then we've had 2 more children, and then we have this baby, and we've had 2 miscarriages. So all in all, I've had 6 pregnancies, which is crazy to think about. But that's just something really special, or I guess private about me, but that I try my best to make sure I communicate. I've worked outside of the home. I've worked inside of the home. I've had to take my children with me working outside of the home. So I understand different scenarios and work seasons that you may go through as a mother, as a wife, and then also with finances. So when we started this, when we began this, let's see here. I wasn't pregnant anymore. My son was, my baby was about 7 months old. And so as I shared with you, this is the book that I read. It's called Dave Ramsey's Complete Guide to Money. This was something that was encouraged, not this specifically, but it was encouraged that I read a book on personal or business development. So this was my business development book that I was reading on. And then when my husband and I reached a really financial pitfall of our marriage and, well, finances, then that's when I said, hey, let's try this. So one thing I promised that I would share was where we were at. And so it took me a while, and I actually have my notes from when we began our class. So it was August 30th that we discovered some really tough stuff as far as our marriage goes and our finances. And it looks like we began September 4th. So pretty quickly, as I stated, it was a state of emergency as far as our marriage goes. So there was a need for immediate communication. But it took me from November 4th, 2016, from September 4th, 2016, it took me until November 1st of 2016 to really open the doors of our finances. We were paying things, but it's just overwhelming when you think your finances are one way, and in all reality, they're a different way. And my husband was doing them, and then we decided for me to do them. And not necessarily me to do them, but for us to do them, where before, historically, it was me doing them and him knowing nothing about it, and then him doing them and me knowing nothing about it. So we decided that we're going to come together and work as a team. And so that's what we agreed on. So we sat down and looked at all of our debt, and we wrote it out. And the debt amount is here. It's $32,439. We had 3 major credit cards, 4 major credit cards, and a car payment or vehicle payment. And as of today, right now, we have 1 vehicle payment. Everything else has been paid off. And so that amount, I added it up. I don't have the actual balance, but it's like $8,000. The amount is right here. It's $23,460. So this isn't something that I'm pulling out of a hat, and I don't have documentation to kind of just reflect. I wrote down kind of, monthly or every other month. And then when I saw that sometimes the numbers weren't moving, it really was discouraging to me. So I kind of took a break and would revisit it as we paid off large chunks of things. So The first thing that we learned in Dave Ramsey's financial piece was get a savings. Now, it's really hard to wrap my mind around getting a savings when I had debt. Like, usually you pay off your debt first. But he explained that what ends up happening is you have an emergency and you go into your debt again. Like, so, okay, there's an available credit on our credit card. We have an emergency, i.e. like we need tires. That's not really an emergency. Like, you should know that essentially you need tires every 2 years. So you should be budgeting for that. And just understanding and learning how to really be real with where you are at. It takes being on the same page for both the spouses. But it is, it's a habit. It's a habit change. And so I'm going to just read through some of my notes as far as savings go. First, there's 7 baby steps, which I only have 6 written. So maybe it's 6, but I thought there was 7. Bear with me here. So we're going to just go through baby step number 1 and 2 because those are kind of where I'm at right now. Baby step number 1 is $1,500 to $1,000 in the bank. Now that for us was literally impossible. We were on minimal income, and all of our expenses were being exhausted in debt, right? So we had to make a decision to not pay credit cards. That was a hard decision, but the way it was explained was you're never going to pay those credit cards off if you don't get in a place of being, of having some type of savings for the event. Like we did have a time where my husband's car went out, the brakes went out. We did not anticipate for that. I mean, I understand we should know that our brakes are going to go out, but I felt like they went out sooner, or every time that we had checked on them, they weren't due or something like that. And also this was all new for us. So the brakes went out, or maybe it was the brakes, but like the road, like it was more than just replacing the brake pads. Like we thought, okay, we have this much to decide, but it ended up being like a $250 repair with everything being all said and done. And we didn't have it, but then we were like, oh, wait a minute, we do have it. We have our emergency fund. So the way we did that was we chose not to pay 2 of our credit cards. Each one of them were like $160 each. So you think about that, like, yeah, you could very easily get $1,000 in your bank account if you choose not to pay a credit card. Now, it's not to say it's for long term. Like I'm telling you, in 18 months, all of those balances are 0. So it's not to say that I didn't ever pay them, because they're paid off now. But we did have to make a decision. It was a very tough decision, but it did mean that we didn't pay certain things. Obviously, he always talks about your mortgage or your rent being paid for, your gas, your groceries, like never gypping yourself in those areas, because you have to have a roof over your head. You have to have the lights on. You have to get to work. You have to have food. And ultimately, if you don't have those things in order, you're not going to do well in the other areas of like work or parenting or marriage or those types of things. So really being realistic about like your budgets. That was one thing we needed to say, like, okay, well, I've been really selling us short with groceries, so let's increase it a little bit, because $100 is really hard to feed a family of 4 or 5 off of, every 2 weeks or something like that. So we had to be real. So it says $1,000 in the bank, quick. It's the easiest because it's the smallest amount, but it's the hardest because you have to decide if you're going to change. And that is the biggest thing. You have to decide if you're going to change. Even if what you're doing isn't working. So, you might have a system already, but you have to say like, okay, but has it really helped you to maximize every single one of your dollars? If it hasn't helped you to maximize every single one of your dollars, it's not working. So savings must become a priority. And then it talks about giving, saving, and then paying bills. This savings idea and paying off debt, it's an exercise of character. And when I heard him say that, I was like, whoa, yeah, that's so true, And for us as Bible-believing Christians, it's also an exercise of our faith in God, and ultimately having God as our ultimate provider, and us not being the one to dictate, us really living out what we believed as God being our ultimate provider in our lives. So, and it talks about like the U.S. having a negative savings rate. Most U.S. people do not have savings. It's about contentment. Being okay with where you are, sending our children off to college with dignity, you know, those things. Like, my children are young. Well, I guess not super young. My oldest is 10. And, you know, we would like him to go off to college if that's what his desire is. You know, he might want to go trade school or something like that. But being able to say like, okay, well, we have cash for that. That's a reality that I don't know that we ever thought we would really be able to have. And now it is something that we can foresee in the future. And retiring with dignity. So having a savings matters. And so that's the first place that you definitely want to give a priority on. So I'm just looking through my notes here. And so 3 reasons to save. Emergency funds or the unexpected is number 1. Number 2, for purchases. So let's just say for us, we have 2 vehicles. Our one vehicle is the one that we're still paying off, but my husband has a vehicle that's older and it's running, but we can't use it for far. So we are also having to be aware, you know, in the back of our minds that we might have to get him like a little beater for, you know, a couple $1,000s at some point. But for us, we'll probably do a carpool thing between him and I before we choose to get a new vehicle. But our biggest thing right now is my husband is in school full time, and he goes to work and full time, and he goes to school full time. And right now, we have been getting financial aid because of where we have been financially, what our earnings are. But with FAFSA, you have a certain number of hours or credits that you can get financial aid for. And we believe that he has reached that place. So he'll be getting his AA this May. And he will then be going off to a college called Western Governors University, which is a flat $3,000 every 6 months. Very affordable, especially for the person paying cash for something. But it still is $3,000. So for us, that's something we're having to save for. We're saving for his college so we do not go into further debt. Another thing is for wealth building. So obviously wealth building is way down the line. The next step, once we figure out his school, if he's going to get financial aid or not, and as long as we make sure we have that savings in place, is having 3 to 6 months savings available. So basically, should my husband become unemployed, then we have savings for him to live off of in the event of him being unemployed. So anyways, that's kind of my touch on savings and how we made it happen. The best way to save is to pay cash for things, taking everything out of your bank, basically. So the way that I do it is, well, first off, I have a monthly planner that is only for my finances. And we have 2 different bank accounts. We have a main bank account, and then we have our like auto withdrawal bank account. So I have like 2 lines every pay period, and this is like our main account where nothing comes out automatically from this. And then we have our automatic withdrawals here. So like our vehicle payment comes out of this bank account. So my husband has money transferred to that bank account. And then that way it's kind of like, in a sense, garbage in, garbage out, but it's still from our personal checking account. So we have 2 shared checking accounts, and then we have a savings account. Excuse me. I do not feel good, you guys. So a lot's going to change because this had 2 credit cards on here. It's going to change dramatically. We are I mentioned before, we are Bible believing Christians. And so our first thing on the top of every single list is our tithes. So we have our tithes amount here. And one time I shared with a family member who they were conflicted with tithing or not. And one thing I wanted to share that I shared with her, and that I always share, is it never makes sense on paper to tithe. It never, ever makes sense to tithe. And I'm going to just go into it and share with you guys, you know, some kind of behind the scenes. We don't make a lot of money. We don't base my earnings off of our bottom line. My earnings are for the savings of college and those types of things, for my husband's college or for little family trips that we'll be taking, those types of things. So that's what my earnings get to be for. But this is my husband's earning. It's $12.13. And then as you see here at the bottom, it's $13.86. So it's roughly just over the $130 in tithes. So it wouldn't make sense for us to tithe. We essentially should not be tithing. But I can tell you, page after page, pay period after pay period, this has always been the case. And every single pay period, all of our needs have been met. All of them. So I just want to encourage you that if you are a Christian and to obey the command of tithing, and not because of God needs our money or anything like that, but because it's an obedience thing. It's showing our full trust in Him. And of course, that those finances being furthered for His kingdom. So, but after that is like we have rent. We do have a pool fee that we pay, which we use 75% out of the year. So that's something that we find to be important. We have a separate savings that we move over. That's how we've been paying off the debt. So that's how we'll be paying off for larger chunks of our car, our vehicle, so we can get rid of that. Groceries, gas, our laundry card, because we're in an apartment. We do pay our children. There's what's called commission opportunities that they have, and we also have spendings. And then like our cell phone bill, and then like we have Netflix. But our expenses have gone down quite a bit. We don't have cable, or we do have, actually we have Time Warner, but that's because of internet, not because of like actual cable watching. So that kind of digs into that. So we have two separate accounts. Our main account has kind of the where we can pull all of our money out and we pay cash. I pay cash for groceries, pay cash for gas, so on and so forth. Anything that if we're going to go out to eat, we pay cash for that. It's amazing what not swiping that card, what the difference it makes. And it was really hard for my husband to get on board, but once he started seeing the fruit of it, he was all in. I mean, he was just sharing with me 2 days ago. He said, babe, I cannot believe that we are in a place now where we are essentially $190 less per month that we're having to pay in credit cards. And it's just crazy to think of that reality. We've increased our life insurance policies. We're going to be paying for a trust, a living trust. So that way, if something happens to our family, we are our children are taken care of. There's just, I get the chills, you guys. I get the chills, like genuine chills. I cannot communicate how life-changing this has been for, number one, for me, but for my marriage. The freedom that we have with each other, because we are free in our finances. Our fears, we've let them go. And the transparency that has come just because of that, I can't even explain. We are not rich, but we are rich in His glory, but also in our relationship with one another. And we're going to learn how to make dollars spread. We're going to continue to learn how to make dollars spread. And have an amazing future for our family. Not because we're going to rely on the system, but because we're better than that. We're bigger than that. And not that if you're on the system or anything like that, because we've been there and we're getting out of that scenario, but we're not created to just be. We are created to establish goals and write them down and follow them. And, for those who, know the Lord and believe in Him, when you honor Him, He's going to honor you. And so I hope that kind of helps with any questions as far as like the savings go. I'm going to go into debt snowball tomorrow, but I'm going to leave you there. And please, I know that I went through a lot. So if you have any questions, please let me know. I am an open book. I try my very best to share as much as I possibly can. And I truly, I'm humbled. I'm just humbled at this being our reality now, because I didn't think this would be the case not 18 months ago. I didn't think that would be the case. So your life can change when you change, you know. So thank you, everybody. Share in comments below, like, your biggest takeaway. How are you liking this group so far? And don't mind my tears over this particular group, because it's changed our life. Thank you, everybody.